All right, listeners, welcome to the Sandbox. I am April Dawn Patterson, and I want to welcome my guest co-host, Megan McHugh. This is going to be episode 98. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, April. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Good. It's so lovely to be back and to be co-hosting with you for this very awesome reason, and that is that we are interviewing Reverend Rose Hope today about her book, The Ark. And with that, I want to just introduce Reverend Rose Hope and say welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be with you.
Likewise, April and I both had the opportunity to read your book, and we just are so excited to have the opportunity to sit down with you, chat about maybe how that book came to be, some of the quotes that we really were inspired by, and everything like that. So, just since you're new to the podcast and new to the listeners, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get more into your book?
Oh, thank you so much. So, I am a Reverend of Metaphysics, meaning that my life's work is all about discovering who we are and why we're here. What is this game that we are playing? What is this world really about? So, I became really fascinated with this whole idea of meaning of life and trying to find happiness as I went through my own life experiences. And of course, having my own near-death experiences really helped to shape that for myself. So I spent a lot of time playing the normal, like, hey, get married, have a successful career, have a family, all of those things. And I found myself really empty. I found myself playing the I'll be happy when game. Have you ever played that game before? Because it's a losing game. And I played that game. I'll be happy when the bills are paid. I'll be happy when I have my children. I'll be happy when, and I couldn't find that. And then I felt really guilty and shameful that I had all this wonderful life and I couldn't enjoy it. I felt so disconnected from myself. And so I spent most of my life running away from myself. And I found such a beautiful divine pathway in leaning in to myself and walking the journey to my soul. And so this is my life's work now, is to help people to walk that journey inward and to find the truth about who they are, why they're here, and remember how sacred they are. So that is my passion, and that is the work that I spend most of my days doing.
Which is such a powerful way to live, right? I don't remember where this came from. And honestly, April, we might have talked about this at the last podcast, but the purest thing that we can offer this universe is not actually love, but authenticity. And
Mm.
by walking the path to your soul, you're getting closer to that authentic capital A self. And it's so powerful that you help other people do that.
Well,
So
thank you. Because it is scary, isn't it? Like, isn't it? It's terrifying. There's a little quote that I have that talks about this idea that we do everything we can to resist going into our souls because we're so afraid of what we're going to find there. But I'm telling you, it's the most potent, magical, heavenly space that you can access. And it might take a little bit to get there, but oh man, it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
I know you actually get to operate on such a higher vibration, and we'll definitely get into that. So obviously, you just mentioned your life path is about finding out why we're here and that you had had some near-death experiences, which is really the heart of the book that at least I read was a lot about discovering yourself and that launch pad, that jump off point. Could you maybe tell the listeners a little bit about this book at a high level and or what you're hoping they receive from reading the book?
Well, first things first, this book, you're right, it's a book of remembering or returning to self. That's what I really wanted people by the end of the book. I wanted them to say, hey, like, I went through that, or I remember this about myself, or maybe I do actually have some of these gifts and things inside of me. And so the book is based on my own life experience. So even though technically it is considered a fictional book, it is based on my life. So I actually had two near-death experiences. The first one, I was just 5 years old. I choked actually on a jawbreaker candy. You guys remember those jawbreaker candies? Yeah. So my dad said, go sit down before you choke. I went to go sit down. I took a breath, and sure enough, I choked. So my dad actually did the Heimlich maneuver on me. He wasn't able to get it out. So I actually went limp and I had an out of body. So I floated above my body and I witnessed my body below. I saw my mom running to call for help. I saw my sister looking around the corner to see what the commotion was. And there was like chaos and panic below, but I didn't feel that. I felt held in the arms of God. And so I remember that that moment of just feeling completely safe in time, literally floating above my body. And my dad actually did something you're not supposed to do. He used his thumb and he pushed against the inside of my throat enough that he could leverage to get that jawbreaker candy out, and he did, and got me breathing again. So I often say my dad gave me life not once but twice. And as a result of that, that near death caused me to be an overachiever people pleaser. Because let me tell you, I thought I now have to prove to God or creator or source, whatever you call the higher power, I now have to prove my worth. I was given a second chance. I better earn it. And so by grade 4, I was the president of the Kids for Saving Earth Club. I felt like I had some big mission I had to accomplish. By the time I was 18, I was a registered EMT and dispatcher. So I worked on the ambulance and in dispatch in the medical field. And as I worked in that field, something interesting started to happen to me because I was very intuitive as a kid. And especially after that near death, I was really tuned in. I would be able to tell things. I would go to my mom and be like, hey, mom, so and so is dying. And my mom would be like, what? And then she'd get a phone call that so and so had died. So stuff like that happened. But because I was raised Catholic as well, I was like, oh, that stuff was uncomfortable. So I just kind of hid it away. Now, fast forward, I'm an EMT working on ambulance, and now I've got spirits coming home with me. And I'm thinking I've lost my effing marbles. I've lost my mind. And so I was like, okay, maybe I need to leave this job. And I also had a knee injury. So it worked out great because I went into teaching. So then I was teaching, which I was so passionate about. And it was a part of it's part of my soul DNA as well to be that teacher. And so I taught in medical sciences for the bulk of my 20s, but I was still really struggling figuring life out. And so, of course, lo and behold, here's another near death experience for you. And so the near death experience actually has some similarities to the book, the one that I had. I was recovering at home from a surgery and I went to heaven. I was surrounded by angels. I was floating in the most euphoric, beautiful space you can imagine. And my brother-in-law, who caught me at the time, actually validated my angelic experiences because as I had the courage to share that story, because at first I was like, oh, people are going to think I've really lost it if I start saying, oh, I saw the angels and they're all colorful and this is what they look like. And so in the days to follow, it was so compelling. I had to share with somebody. So a girlfriend had come over because I was still in recovery from the surgery. And I'm telling her the story about the angels. And my brother-in-law, who had caught me and was with me when I had gone unconscious and unresponsive, he comes running into the kitchen and he says, I knew it. I felt the angels too. So he had what is called a bystander spiritual experience, which actually is a thing with near death. I didn't know this before, but with people that have near death experiences, sometimes bystanders also experience some sort of spiritual kind of awakening as well. So what happened for him is he said he was running around panicking, looking for the phone to call 911. And he said all of a sudden he felt these angels, that's how he could describe them. And they said to him in his mind, just wait, she's going to be fine. So at which point he came back to me instead of running around panicking. And he said he called my name and I opened my eyes with a smile on my face. So he really validated that experience. And I honor my brother-in-law because if it wasn't for him validating that, I don't know if I would be telling the story. I don't know if I would have written this book even, So that validation was so important and I needed it. I needed it. So now fast forward and I go through my life experiences and go through some death and some loss and divorce and like all the life experiences, and I finally found my way where spirit just says, hey, I'm hitting you with a spiritual 2x4. I'm leaving you spiritual breadcrumbs. It's time to pay attention. And so I started to pay attention and I started to lean in and discover who I was. And so there we go. In a nutshell, that's kind of like the beginning of the story. And then, of course, the story builds on this magical character, Celeste, who's the main character, and she goes on this magical, fantastical journey with the angels. So there you go.
Yeah, it is a really powerful book and definitely not to be missed, which is why I'll say it now at the top of this recording how April and I are going to be giving 5 listeners copies of your book, which we're really excited to give out. So there's not going to be a random number generated. The first 5 people that reach out to April for a copy of the book will get that mailed to them. So we're really excited to offer that just so more people can have exposure to your message, which is really, really powerful. And something that I did as I was reading the book is I kind of wrote down some quotes that I really, really loved. And I was hoping we could talk about them either from your experience or maybe some of your clients, high level, no names or anything like that. This first quote that I wanted to mention. I'll read it and I think it'll give you context. You'll know. All right. So it says, but as Celeste and Leslie focused more on the physical realm, they slowly let go of the fascination with the spiritual realm. Once a source of solace and guidance for Celeste, the connection to her sacred gifts faded. To
Mm,
continue to be accepted by everyone, she buried them deep within her, no
mm,
longer able to tap into the magic that had once filled her soul. And I
mm.
loved that because it's such a natural phenomenon. Like I have clients or what have you, you don't know a lot about my background, but they'll kind of have that experience where it wakes them up. Like you said,
Yeah.
they'll have that bystander. And then to be able to keep fitting into this third dimension, which really asks us to kind of maybe pretend that that's not happening or what have you, we lose that consciousness. That's such a natural phenomenon. Do you see that happening a lot, or what feedback do you have on that phenomenon that you see in others as they kind of embrace this journey back to their soul?
I love that you pulled that out. In fact, I got the shivers as you were reading it. So thank you so much for pulling that to the surface. And I think this is a story for most of humanity where something shakes us or moves us, and then we shrink up again. So we have this expansive experience, this enlightening experience, this aha moment, this like, ah, angels singing, right? And then we go back to our normal life that we have been programmed and conditioned to be living. And I first want to tell people that that's totally normal, by the way. Please don't beat up on yourself because you had an awareness and then you kind of sunk back into old default patterns. This is the story of our lives. We all do this, right? So giving yourself grace, by the way, on the journey, really top priority. But that being said, what happens for most of us is, again, I mentioned the spiritual 2x4s. These might be a massive loss in your life. It might be a health scare. It might be like whatever. And they're there to kind of wake us up and say, hey, am I really living my best life? Am I really aiming to create heaven on earth for myself? Or am I doing something that's taking me farther away from that? And so we go through this process where it's like, okay, oh yeah, I got it figured out. I've got rid of some of those default mechanisms and I'm doing better. But then again, oh, wait a second, this person made me feel a little bit like this, and I've been triggered or I've been whatever. And now we shrink up into our default mode. So it is a little bit of a riding the wave, if you will. Most people don't have one instant where they're like, bam, all of a sudden, oh, I'm totally awake. I'm totally enlightened. Yay. Right? The people that do have that usually end up in the mental hospital, just so you know, because it's so intense, right? Isn't that the truth?
So the truth. Oh,
Yeah. So you might not want that big of a rocket to like catapult you. And so the way that spirit works is like, okay, we're going to make this progressive. So we're going to open them up a little bit, let them feel it out. Yeah, they'll probably go back into some default, but at least they've got a little more awareness than before. And then they build it on layers and layers and layers. So it's normal. And it has to be that way of progressing where we expand and contract and we expand and contract because that's part of the evolutionary process in a way, isn't it?
it really is.
Where it's like, oh, wait a sec, I'm going back into old patterns or old habits here, catching ourselves with this new awareness, and then now leading us to the next phase of our enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. I think, again, very normal process to hide those things away. And I spent much of my life in that, right? Like, oh no, this is making people uncomfortable. Heaven forbid I make someone else uncomfortable with my stuff. So I'm just going to hide that away or shrink that away. And I'm going to be someone else that they want me to be. And, you talked about how we know that authenticity actually vibrates higher than love.
Mhm.
Because for us to fully love ourselves allows us to be this most authentic version. And it
Exactly.
allows us to lead by that example. And you're right. We live in a world that is so conditioned and programmed that there's such a contrast when we start to move into these higher vibrational frequencies of what they would call the 5D or 6D or even 7D, right? What happens is we witness such a contrast with the rest of the world now. So I have a client right now who's struggling because they're seeing things in this enlightened way, but then they go out with friends and they go out in public and they're noticing now the negativity and the judgment and all the stuff. And they're like, I don't even want to go out anymore. What do I do? I can't just hibernate, but like, how do I go out? And so, of course, that's part of our process and our learning is how do I get to go out and be safe in this world and return to myself, all while still being fully who I am, whatever degree of truth I am in that moment.
Exactly. And for me, I think it's finding a way to do that ethically. There are definitely times where I'll get downloads just walking down the street. I'm like, ooh, you know what I mean? Like, ooh, they need to go to a chiropractor or whatever. It's just like, ooh, they don't even know. And there was a time where that was absolutely what I did. Like, hey, when I would just stop somebody on the street. And now I just don't think that's ethically my responsibility, but I always send people love.
Yes.
While, yes, I can know that, I can have that information, but in most cases, that's not for me to give. At least that's how I operate in this world. But
Yeah.
that's not necessarily saying that's how everybody should do it. Because, like you said, this is everybody's individual evolution. And
Yes.
as a society, we're evolving. And it comes with those peaks and those valleys or those forwards and those backwards. But it doesn't indicate forwards good, backwards bad. And
That
growth
is
is a
correct.
part of the whole. I really, really loved that answer from you. And it
Awesome.
just shows the enlightenment is there. Another quote that I found, and some of these aren't necessarily like together, there might be themes we kind of
Sure.
retouch or revisit on.
Okay.
But right near that was this quote. There was a deep knowing that there was a connection beyond this lifetime, and it sparked memories of her past and a faint connection to a long ago spiritual connection. And this is kind of where you met somebody that you had potentially a romantic past life with, but where you were in another relationship. So, what are your thoughts on past lives? Do you think that this lifetime is meant to stir things up in us so that we remember that there were past lives? What are your thoughts on past lives and how we engage in them within our current context and third dimension experience?
Great, great, great question. So, absolutely, I do believe in past lives. I'm an old soul myself. I know I've had many. I've had dreams, I've had visions. I've felt myself being brought to those lifetimes. And so, there's a couple things that happen when we start to awaken. Because we're vibrating at a different frequency, oftentimes what happens is we start to attract other soul family. I'll give you an example. I know I've been with my mom before in another lifetime. I know that I've been with my son before in another lifetime. So I have this awareness that I've got soul family already connected. But what you find is as you continue to spiritually evolve, as you do the work, you'll find more soul family showing up, right? So you'll find more love interest, more connections where, you see someone, you're like, I know you. I feel you. There's something about you that I remember. And you can almost pick it up instantly. And this happens more and more the more you come into your higher vibrational frequencies, where you start to witness more and more of those soulmate type of connections. And by the way, there's more than one soulmate in this world, and there's tons of different types of soulmates, just so everyone knows. For those of you that are like, I need to find my soulmate, it comes in a lot of shapes and sizes, just so you know. But the point being is that we have an opportunity to not hold ourselves back from our past lives, but to be able to heal the deeper wounds that are in our DNA, that are in our cells. Because as past lives go, I could have also been my own great, great, great grandmother, okay, in my bloodline. So I could have a bloodline and a soul line history, right? And so what happens is in these lifetimes, there's different contracts, different karmic debts, different things that happen, different subconscious imprints that say a really common one is this one. For a lot of healers and light workers, almost every single one has the vow that says, I'm not worthy to receive. And so if we can understand that on a cellular level, on a deeper subconscious level, that that imprint was made at some point, well, now I can do the deeper digging and I can heal that aspect of myself so that that's not playing in the background holding me back. Because I'll tell you, that was playing in my background holding me back. And so now understanding that I am already receiving in just being here. I am receiving, right? We're all worthy of receiving, obviously, but understanding that there's all this stuff historically that is holding us hostage here right now. And so it gives us the opportunity to be curious, to have a sense of awe and wonder and say, oh, I wonder what more's going on because I know that that's not true, but how come it's still holding me back? Well, it's because it's in the cells. It's rooted in there, right? In that subconscious. So we start getting rid of that, unpacking all of that, and all of a sudden, there's nothing holding us back anymore, right? We're moving forward in a way that feels so alive and so good and healthy for us. The other thing that I also bring into the mix when we talk about past lives, it also brings a great deal of grace and mercy for our spirit. And let me explain what I mean by this, because when I can look, knowing I had a history of X, Y, and Z, and say, oh, no wonder that triggered me, or no wonder I show up in this lifetime in that way. It's almost like it just gives us that grace and mercy to say, oh, it makes sense that you would do the thing. It would make sense that you would show up in that way. And so then we're not in this place of beating ourselves up so much. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty good at being self-critical, right? Just a smidge.
Oh, you know what I mean? A
Right.
little sprinkling. No,
A
no,
little
exactly,
sprinkle of little
exactly.
sprinkle
Mhm.
of guilt and shame,
Of course.
like,
Who doesn't love
right?
that?
So,
Yeah.
and so many of us are held back by those energies and we hold ourselves hostage to that. Whereas as we pull up these past lives, we can say, oh my God, no wonder I have abandonment issues. No wonder I have these issues. No wonder whatever. But the power of no wonder, it gives us so much grace to lean into forgiveness, which allows us to complete this healing. You said one more thing there in that quote. And you said, like, are people awakening more to this, what's happening in their past lives and connected? And what's the age of Aquarius? The light is being shone on us like never before. So, Megan, you're right. We're in this phase where right now there's a huge remembrance going on. It's like an expedited remembrance. It's kind of like if we were in a pitch black room right now, and then I turn the switch of the light on, all of a sudden I can see the mess on my desk and I can see the dust on my shelf and I can see the scuffs on the wall. We couldn't see that before. So a lot of people are saying, oh my God, this world is going to hell. What are we going to do? They're getting caught in fear because they're seeing the dirt and the dust and the mess. But it was always there. That's the thing. It was always there. It's just now we get to see it for what it is. And this is actually helping us to discover deeper layers of our truth within us. And for us as light workers and healers and teachers to really rise to the occasion now, for us to be able to come together and shift humanity and get rid of the fear plague that is persisting in our world.
Oh, definitely. I like the phrase fear plague, but it's one of those things, like you said early on when we were just getting started, about how fear really does create the motivating factor for us to get deeper. Fear is that double-edged sword in a way. The opposite side is hope. We've got this fear that can dog us, but if we are actually able to hold the light on it and be with it in its painful place, we can also grow. And I'm with you. I'll definitely I really want to keep this on you mostly, but I had this past life regression thing happen wherein I realized I saw this person's face and I was like, oh, and this person was basically responsible for my death in that lifetime. This was like,
Okay.
1400s
Yeah.
or this happened all the time.
Yeah.
The witch got burned. You know what I mean? We've
Absolutely.
all
Yeah.
been there more than once. Any old souls done that song and dance. And then I met that person a few months later. And I know that sounds insane. Like, you can't really see a face before, but
You felt it.
I felt it. I was like, oh, and he was my coworker. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, I will not. And I was always very kind, but I never offered to be on projects with him because I just did
Yeah.
not trust that he wouldn't, not necessarily throw me under the bus, because I basically died from his own naivete, as it were. It wasn't like
Right.
some forceful thing,
Okay.
but I just
Yeah.
didn't trust him. And it wasn't rude, but he was up to the same old naivete. And it was just like always kind of this deer in headlights, always getting stuck behind projects that he didn't know how to do. And I was just like, oh
Uh,
man, I don't know if you've changed much. But it actually brought me to this place with past lives and the whole time of things. Like, I don't think time is linear. I think it's
it's
very
not.
possible that he came right from that lifetime to this lifetime.
Very
Like,
well could be. Yep.
that's why he had not progressed very much. I was like, oh, this is his next life for him, even though I've had maybe 15. I don't know. But I
Yeah.
think I've had more time between that life and this life than he did.
Yeah.
And I find them so fascinating. But I know I've got a few more questions on them. I just didn't separate them. But later in the book, without the quote here, the guides that you met or that Celeste meets in the Ark basically say something like, well, we're not going to tell you everything about every past life. And we don't encourage that you go delve every past life in the Akashic records. That would be a waste of your time in this
Yeah.
lifetime.
Yeah.
Do you have any reflection on that you could give us, like what the role of past lives are in the
Yeah.
3D? I think you touched on that, but any other insights?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that we don't get too lost in the past either. And part of what I wanted to pull out was, yeah, it is helpful, but we don't want to necessarily get lost in there either, where we could go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole, right? We can attach meaning to anything if we really want to, but that's not the point. The point is that we're allowing ourselves to heal and to come into deeper aspects of forgiveness and love for thyself in the present, in the here and the now. And so that's what we're doing is we're leveraging the history to come into deeper healing. So when people say, well, you're not living in the present, you're living in the past, that's because we're holding on to things. We're not letting go of things. We're holding old beliefs and patterns that aren't healthy and serving us. What I'm saying is we leverage the past life experiences to help us come into deeper levels of understanding, forgiveness, etc. And so using it in the most effective way possible. The same goes with the future, because people will ask me all the time, like, what's the future? What does it look like? What's coming for me? That sort of thing. And I love to remind people that so much can change about your future pathway. So even though there is a bit of a blueprint for you and a blueprint for all of us, we still have the ability to change the walls and decorate and all the things, right? At one point in time, it might look like X, Y, and Z, and the other point in time, it's A, B, and C. So I remind people to not get attached to any particular outcome. It's actually something called continual expectancy. And continual expectancy does not mean we have a specific expectation of how things are going to turn out, but rather we expect that whatever it is that does happen is exactly what is needed for the highest good. So when we believe in that, then it knocks us away from needing to be attached to any particular thing or way that it's going to work out. But at the end of the day, this all comes back to being fully present and engaged in the now. Like right now, I am just with you. I'm nowhere else, and there's nowhere else I want to be. I get to be right here, right now. And that is so fulfilling to me. And that is the challenge that most of us have as human beings, is that we really struggle with being right here, right now. And right here, right now is where heaven is. It's where happiness is. It's where joy is and love and all the things that we feel like we're missing exists.
Mhm.
And yet we are living outside of that space. So anyway, I know that was a long-winded version of the answer for you on that, but yes, use your past lives for your advantage, but don't get stuck in the past. Big
Exactly.
difference.
April?
I just wanted to bring in, partly for Megan's sake, a Wheel of Time reference here. Okay, so there's that character who can foresee the future. What's her name? Min? Her name's
Min?
Min.
Have you seen The Wheel of Time, Rose?
I have.
Oh,
Yes.
we love it.
Yeah.
We love
Okay.
that here.
So Min,
Wheel of
she
Time.
gets these mental images of what's going to happen in the future, and it scares her, and it can kind of sometimes scare other people too. And even though that thing does happen, the context is completely different. And the thing is that you had to make decisions not based on what you were told is going to happen, but what you have in front of you in the present moment, and just take the next best step.
So fantastic. And I'm with you. Like we don't actually know the context. And I think that's the other thing is that maybe that humans try to, I don't want to say play the big shot, but
Yeah.
our ego, and I have a couple quotes in here about the ego too, but we really want to know all the details. I like how you said people
Mhm.
go toward the future and try to figure out the future.
Yeah, and then they get attached.
Yeah.
And then they suffer because it's not turning out the way that they
Suffering.
thought it was. They either
Ah,
suffer in the knowing in
true.
advance of
Yeah.
it looking a certain way, or they suffer in the actual experience because it's not what they thought.
Exactly. Or that the present is really all there is, and that we're also taught, at least in this Western society, about multitasking being more productive, when
Sure.
really, like you said,
Mhm.
being in the now is the most powerful place to be. And
It is, and the most productive.
it
Hmm.
is. I know. And that's the other thing is like rest not being a reward. I don't have to be really, really productive to then take some time to rest. I do my best integration when I'm fully rested and I've had a long
Exactly.
walk and I've taken care of my body. And when my
True.
mind's going, I do some journaling. It's so simple, but
Yeah.
not easy for us.
Well, and that's the thing. God is simple. Spirit is simple. And yet we tend to overcomplicate it as much as possible. But some of the most simplest things I do are some of the most beneficial things I do.
Mhm.
Right? And I think it's so easy for us to get caught up again in the ego-based, this is what success looks like. This is what I need to do. This is how people have to perceive me. And we get so lost in that. And that's why people are feeling so disconnected. We live in a distracted world that tells you how you're supposed to be and show up. And so everyone's trying to fit into that and continuing to get more and more disconnected from themselves when really the invitation is for us to be connected to self.
And I guess self through others too, Wow.
I'll just quickly say that Megan and I both know Courtney Starkey, and Courtney is doing this YouTube series right now where every day she is doing a guided hypnosis session
Mm,
on YouTube with a spirit animal. And
awesome.
so I'm not able to catch every night, but it's free hypnosis. It's amazing. And
Yes.
so I had some free time before I hopped on the call. They're going through a farmer's book, a spirit animal book,
Okay.
and they were on the armadillo. And so I went ahead and just did that before our call. And at the end, okay, the armadillo is going to give you a gift. So I held out my hand, and what I saw in this guided meditation was some bubble gum. And I'm like, okay, I don't even like bubble gum. I guess maybe because I had TMJ as a teenager and I couldn't chew gum or else it would make my jaw hurt. So
Okay.
I just got to where I don't chew gum. So I was like, okay, what is the message behind this gum? So I'm chewing it, and in this imagery, I'm blowing up a big bubble.
Wow.
And it was telling me that that's how I can make space for myself.
Oh,
Within this world, I can make my own world, and
yeah.
it's pink and it's fun and it can be what I want it to be. I'm
Yes.
creating this bubblegum fun
Girl,
experience
love it.
within the wider container. And so I just thought that was just a fun reflection.
I mean, I think even the bubble gum really does bring us into our next quote, which is what I'm doing over here. I'm like, oh, what's the next quote? What else did I write down? And I've got, remember who you are, a sacred being with amazing gifts that will change the world. The
Mm,
spirit realm has cheered you on since your awakening. Ever since you slid back into only embracing your human experience, everyone here on your spirit team has worked together to get your attention and reconnect. We want as many people on earth to remember who they are and to uncover the spiritual talents they have, bubblegum included. So
yes.
that kind of really touching on this belief that we are meant to be connected to ourself, like you said, and form this heaven on earth or form this world within us.
Mhm.
Can you touch on, I guess, is that part of your belief system or how you see that developing for each individual or society as a whole?
Well, this is so perfect. And I love that April brought in the bubble gum and creating this world around her with her bubble. Because I work a lot with that, our energy field being our bubble. I call it my sacred space or my sacred bubble. And so I have the power, the personal power for me to decide what comes in and out of my sacred bubble. I have the power to design my sacred bubble and how I move through this world. I have total control over that. And a big part of the awakening is remembering our personal responsibility. And personal responsibility is about having personal power. And when I say personal power, it doesn't mean that I need to have power over anyone else, because people who are in true personal power have no desire or need to have power over anyone or anything around them, because they have such power within themselves, if that makes sense. So, what I know to be true is that everything that I want to create out here has to be created in here first. So anytime that I have an experience outwardly, it's a mirror, it's a lens for me. So, for example, say somebody out here calls me a name or judges me. Okay. It's hurtful. I don't like it. Doesn't feel good. I have a couple choices here. I can respond and sync to their vibrational field, or I can again choose in my sacred bubble, how do I want to perceive this? How do I want to receive this? How do I want to perceive this? And how do I want to receive this? So I have a choice to perceive whatever their attack is on me as something that they're moving through. I have a choice in perceiving it as having maybe not much to do with me, other than the fact that maybe it gives me some reflection. And then I have an opportunity to receive whatever value or lesson I need to learn in that. So most of us as human beings sync to the vibrational frequency that's around them. I'm telling people that they don't have to do that because they have their bubblegum shield that they then can decide, have that personal power of whether or not to take things on. You see, we also get caught up in this aspect of false responsibility. And false responsibility is exhausting. And this is for the people pleasers that are listening, by the way, the people that say yes when they mean no. That was me for most of my life. I still struggle. I'm still recovering people pleaser. But what would happen is I would take on all this extra stuff because I felt like, oh, I have to be responsible. I got to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders. And that left me exhausted, resentful, all of the things. And I recognized that the more false responsibility I take, the more exhausted I become, the more resentful I become. So I was so consumed with false responsibility. And by the way, it didn't just mean tasks and activities. I was also carrying energetic emotions for other people too. And so as I started to set boundaries, I would set a boundary and say no to somebody. They would feel disappointed, and then I would carry the disappointment for them. So that's no good either, right? Because we need to also set an energetic emotional boundary as well. So then we've got this idea of soul level responsibility. And soul level responsibility is fulfilling. Soul level responsibility is like, I know I need to be here on with April and Megan today. This is a soul responsibility. I'm called to being here. I know I have to be here, and whatever I need to do to make it happen, I'm going to make it happen. And it's filling me up. If this was a false responsibility, I'd be like, oh hell, like, do I have to do the thing? Like, what time is it? None of that's happening here because I'm in soul responsibility. And so this opportunity for us to say, okay, is this a false responsibility or a soul level responsibility? Even just asking that question alone can help us to discern better what it is that we are meant to be doing in our lives. When you think about it, our soul got to go into the space called the zone of choice at some point. And in that zone of choice, our soul said, okay, out of all the thousands of babies that you could choose, which one is it? And the soul chose very lovingly, with unconditional love. The soul chose your vessel, your body to be in. It said, that's the human that I need to inhabit in order to get me to my highest evolution possible. And I love this person. I love myself so much that I'm willing to choose the person that's going to get me exactly where I need to be. And yet we come into this world and we actually feel resentful towards our bodies. We feel resentful towards the circumstances of our lives. And yet it was made from such a place of love. And so I've had to kind of understand as I've gone on this journey that, okay, my body, this time of being alive, my family, it was all chosen knowing all the dramas and traumas I've had, all chosen knowing that this would get me to my highest heights yet. And so there's an invitation for us to come into this place of sweet surrender to that and knowing that your soul chose wisely. And if you don't think your soul has chosen wisely, then that's an invitation for you to lean in and say, okay, where am I really? How am I perceiving my life? Where am I taking on false responsibility and soul level responsibility? And start getting really clear on that.
I'm with you. I think there was two quotes from the book, The Ark, that I really felt touch on that. That would be so great to discuss. But the one here, this is about like the mirror. This was a little long, but always presume value, she thought to herself. She now recognized that the situations she considered the worst brought with them wonderful gifts, including love and spiritual growth. Instead of questioning why anything so called bad happened to her, perhaps it would be more productive asking how it happened for her. Her shift in perception helped her see the world through a new set of eyes. Every situation came with benefits. She just had to look for them. The water also showed her the mirror of life. It reflected her own internal struggles, played out in her external life as judgment of others, anger, or frustration. If one pays attention, the mirror shines a light on something deeper within, like insecurity or sense of lack. The world acts as a reflector in many ways, and each person has the freedom to choose how to make the most out of it. Think that's
Mhm.
really what you're touching on there
That's
in
it.
terms of coming into this lifetime. Using that quote and what we were just chatting on, if you've worked with clients in the past who really struggle to embrace the challenges that they took on in this lifetime with their blueprint, how does one in this human experience connect to that soul part of them that they might be resentful at? Because this
Yeah.
sometimes the perspective, like we take on a really small perspective to awaken, and it can be a rough transition. I've yelled more than once at my soul team requesting more assistance. I think we all have, when because I think we just are in so much love when we
Yeah.
incarnate, we forget how kind of messed up it is in the third dimension.
Right. It's
Oh,
like, this is
yeah,
so uncomfortable here. And
so
so
uncomfortable. And the
it's,
pain, all the
yeah,
things.
the pain. And this is one thing that we all have to experience as humans. Uncertainty and pain are two of the things that we share, right? We all have to face uncertainty and pain at some point. And so I think that it's easy for us, especially if we've had a lot of trauma and difficulty and abuse. I was very fortunate. I have had some incidences of bullying and abuse, but not to the extent as I know some people have. I've been very blessed that way. So I can't speak for some of those other experiences, but I can tell you that these experiences are showing up for us to heal deeper parts of ourselves, for us to come into deeper aspects of forgiveness and compassion. And most of the time, we fall into the victim mode of suffering and allowing that as an excuse to hold us back and to make choices that maybe aren't most aligned for us. But there are people that overcome that. In fact, I think anyone and everyone can overcome whatever hardships that they've been through by recognizing, again, that there is value in everything. You remember I talked about continual expectancy, expecting that everything is happening exactly as it needs to for my highest good. When we have that understanding, what happens is if we lose a job, if somebody dies, whatever it is that shows up in our life that creates grief and sadness, we can now understand that there's something in there for us. We might not know what it is right away. It might take years even for some of us to discover what that message or lesson or value was. But there is value in it too. And I have clients all the time that will say, "Oh my God, I thought that was the worst thing ever. And it turned out to be the best thing." You know what I mean? Like a breakup, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is awful." But once they're through it, they're like, "Thank freaking God it happened that way." Right. And so we have a tendency of forsaking God or being angry at our spirit team when we're moving through the SHIT. But the invitation is to actually double down rather than reject God or reject the spirit team and saying, "You're doing a crappy job. This is really uncomfortable. Where have you gone?" Right? Instead of rejecting those powerful sources for us, we have an opportunity to double down and say, "You know what? This is really uncomfortable and really awful. Give me more of what I need. Give me more of what I need." Because subconsciously, You needed that horrible experience on some level. I'm not saying you asked for it consciously, but subconsciously, you've invited that experience because you needed to go through that experience for the learning, for the growth, for whatever information that you need to get from that. If you're willing to receive the value in it, then you're winning. But if you can't get yourself to that place of saying, you know what, that was really uncomfortable, that was really hard, I'm still in pain about it, but I know that there's something in it for me, then guess what? That gets revealed to you. And again, not always right away. Sometimes, again, it might take years, but just knowing there's value in it sometimes is enough. The other thing I want to bring about is this, because I think we have this perception that there's all this low vibration, bad energy, we call it, versus the good energy. And I want to see if I can reframe that a little bit, because I think that there's this perception that we have to reject the bad and receive the good. But that is not the truth. And so we get caught up in this, it's called spiritual bypassing, where we're like, oh, I'm just going to think positive because I don't want to feel that grief or I don't want to feel that shame. So I'm going to just pretend it's all la la la. There is an opportunity for us to leverage even the things we perceive as low vibration or bad. And I'll give an example. I'm going to use grief because I recently went through quite a grief phase for myself after losing a few people that I loved deeply. And so I was moving through the grief of that. And they, again, even for me, I was like, oh, I don't want to feel this. Oh, can I keep myself distracted? I'm just going to go to work. I'm just going to go do the things. But eventually the grief got louder and louder. And I said, okay, grief, I'm sorry that I've been rejecting you. I welcome you. So I shifted that and I welcomed the grief. I said, okay, grief, let's do this. Let's lean in. What have you got for me? So I use a technique where I actually befriend whatever that vibrational energy is. So I'll even cup my hands like this, like I'm holding a cute little bunny or a cute little bird or something. And I'll say, oh, hey, grief. Usually I'm bawling. Hey, grief. Ah. Right. And I'll say, what have you got for me? What are you showing me? What do I need to see that I couldn't see before? And what happens with that grief is something so magical. And we can do this with any perceived low vibration energy. What happens right away, as soon as I say, I see you and I hear you, guess what happens to that energy? That energy already starts to shift and alchemize. Yeah, they're like little children. All energy, treat it like as though it's this little innocent child. The resentment that comes in, the anger that comes in, treat it as though it's an innocent little child. And you start talking to it, and all of a sudden, watch how it changes, watch how it shifts, watch how you get information from that. Oh my God, I was grieving because I loved so deeply. Oh my God, I've now learned whatever, X, Y, and Z, right? So we start to get all of that beautiful, juicy learning, and then we receive the value for it. And that is a really beautiful way of moving us through that healing process.
Megan is pretty skilled at that. I think we mentioned this in our last episode that we did together, but when she was guiding me through a hypnosis session, because she has this psychic gift, she could see this block. And so with her experience in leading through Yoga Nidra, she was
Yeah.
able to help me name what I was feeling and
Wow.
invite that feeling, which happened to be anger,
Yes.
into a tea party. So I sat down to
Yes.
tea with my anger. And so, like you said, it turned this powerful, angry thing into a child that was able to voice its
Yeah.
feelings and its needs.
Yes.
And I was able to address that and let it go in peace. It was happy. I was
Oh,
happy. Megan was happy. We could continue with the hypnosis.
yay. That is the best.
Definitely.
That's it, right? So whether you have a tea party or whether you just hold that energy gently, this is about allowing ourselves to play with a sense of curiosity and with a sense of understanding that everything holds value. It reminds me, there's a tribe in Africa, and forgive me, I don't remember which tribe, but when someone does something wrong in the village, rather than incarcerating them, the whole village gathers around them and they tell them everything they've done well or the positive impact that they had on others in the community. Could you imagine if that's how we started living? That instead of persecuting and judging and condemning one another, we celebrated the light that they shone on us. I just feel like that would be such a potent way for us to really shift our whole humanity.
And our awareness away from, oh, bad or dark means
Yes.
one. And
Yeah,
I'm with you. These quotes with Celeste, like those bottoms turned out to be the firm bedrock upon which the next joyful experience could be. And
that's
that
right.
really, I think, takes us into kind of another quote I have here, and that is the people that are potentially not wanting to become awake or aware or embrace the darkness. I always tell a lot of people dismissiveness is not serenity. Like,
Right.
oh, this isn't happening. La 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 la.
Right. Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's not serenity. That's dismissiveness. And now we've got to look at that. Yeah. So I really loved that story on grief and befriending it and holding it gently. You even said with people that have had really dark experiences on maybe on some subconscious level. I can't really attest to that or not, but that it was meant for them to grow through and just believing that there is some value to what they are learning. It might take years. That's the problem, is that
Yeah.
3D time is the worst time. That is some painful time that it takes years to get through things. Unlike Celeste's angels, so here's the quote here. As I experience situations and emotions through you, I can grow and learn as well. But my thoughts and emotions are not confined to a physical brain like yours. This allows me to recall every detail from all of your lifetimes all at the same time without feeling overwhelmed. So technically, my wisdom comes from you. And this is like an angel or a sentient light being speaking with Celeste in the ark, in this place where there's just all wisdom. But here in the 3D, we are confined. So do you have any suggestions, like you said, holding an emotion and naming it and not running from it, or finding the support system that you need to go through those darker or harder experiences that could last some unknown amount of time? Do you
Mhm.
have any thoughts there? Like our spirit team, they're not feeling the pain that we're feeling. How do
Yeah.
we work with them when they don't have that? Any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just invite the possibility, the consideration that we're actually not confined here at all. So, starting with that, right? We've been told that we're limited in this human form, but what if we're not? I'm not saying that's true. I'm just inviting the consideration for that because I think that's really important. And I got to be honest, the more I understand this quantum world that we live in, the less restricted and limited I feel. I feel like anything is possible, truly. I don't feel confined in any way, shape, or form other than the confines I put within myself on myself. So just wanted to share that as a food for thought. Now, that being said, you just quoted this experience where the angels learn through us as well. And the way that that came about is really, again, reminding us that we're all one. There is no thing that I cannot share with another human being or another entity or another energy, that we all have aspects of collective consciousness, if you will. And so what you can access, I can access. It's actually not necessarily specific to you, although because you have a slightly different blueprint, you might be chosen to say be psychic, where maybe I'm chosen to be more of a medium. You know what I mean? So we might have different skill sets that help and support each other. But I think the point of that kind of quote in that section of the book was really to remind us that we're no better than the other. The angels aren't better than us or more godly than us necessarily, that we are all one, we're all connected, and we're all working actually as a giant organism. And the more that we can come to this understanding, the less judgment we're going to have. And I know people keep saying with all these natural disasters, Judgment Day is coming. It's not Judgment Day, it's Compassion Day, where we actually fall away from judgment and we recognize the truth of who we all are. And so it's an invitation for us to recognize the God within us. There's this story about God and God sitting with his like council, his own spirit council, if you will. And God says, I'm getting really annoyed with these humans. I need to go away and I need to hide away for a little while. And so one of the council members on God's team says, you know what? Go to the top of Mount Everest, the highest mountain. Go and no one will find you there. And another one of his council steps in, and I'm saying him, could be him or her, whatever your belief is again around God. The next council says, no, no, no. They'll find you up on the top of the mountain. Go to the depths of the sea, the deepest depths of the ocean. Go there and they will not find you. And another one said, no, no, they're going to find you there too. Go into the heart of man. they will never look for you there. And so it's a reminder that we all have God inside of us. We're an extension of God. And again, use whatever words you want: creator, source, divine. Point being is we are an extension of that. Just like we are an extension of our parents, et cetera, et cetera. So understanding that we have God within us is one of the most potent things that we can do for ourselves. Because I don't know about you guys, I was raised Catholic. God was a man in the sky. God was so removed from me, and God would condemn me and punish me if I didn't obey. So that was a God that I grew up with, but that is not the God I know now. And so if your definition in your relationship with God is serving you, fantastic. If it's not, change it. An invitation for you to get to know God, a new version of God, an aligned version of God for yourself. No matter what your background is, no matter what you call it, it doesn't matter, but whatever that is for you, and start building the relationship with it. Every day I wake up and I say, "Good morning, God. I know you're rising with me today. Thank you so much. And thank you for supplying with me with everything I need and doing everything that I need to get done today." And it's like, I no longer carry the burden of being human because it's not me doing the work. I get to work with God doing everything through me. It changes the whole game. And so I think a big part of this idea is that, again, we have so much more inside of us than we even realize. There's an infinite resource for us. All of the happiness, all the grace, everything that you're desiring that you're not finding out there, it's all in here. It's all in there.
It's true. And for me, it's about removing those layers that stand in between me and it,
Yes.
which I think is the path that I'm taking in this lifetime. I'm not one of those people that's just going to be like, oh, there I am, and I've like, fully arrived and I'm
Right.
levitating. I don't have that experience, but I have had at least enough of an awakening where it's like, oh no, I do have this conscious continuing belief. And that is one of the quotes here that we have: having a relationship with the divine allows unlimited access to all of your sacred skills and infinite wisdom. Over time, humans have mostly forgotten they have access to any of this. But when you build a relationship with your true highest self or God, you connect with the power of the universe. Is that kind of what you were touching on there? And any other thoughts on
Exactly
that?
it. We have direct access, and it's stored inside of us. Do you guys know how magnificent the human body is, by the way? We have universes within universes. We're multidimensional beings. It's not just, oh, I'm Reverend Rose. It's, oh, wait, I have a higher self. I've got an ego self. And in metaphysics, there's the subconscious layers and stuff like that. But to keep it simple, oftentimes what I'll teach my clients is, if you can understand that you get to be the witness for yourself and then you get to run the ship being, okay, I have my ego self, which is known as the false self in metaphysics, and I have my higher self. So if I can start to see that I've got these different aspects of myself and I can start to catch what's talking when and what's running the show, and then make better decisions in terms of who gets to run the show, all of a sudden it changes the whole game. And I know you had a couple quotes around ego or
Yep, I
something.
have one right here. This is when Celeste is chatting with, I believe, Adam in the Ark.
Right.
It says, unfortunately, the ego mind has lost its way. To stay safe, and the role of the ego was to protect and guide you safely through life. But unfortunately, the ego mind has lost its way. To stay safe, people play
Mm,
small, even though their souls are screaming for growth. That
mm,
is why there is so much depression in the world. It is
yeah.
because of the conflict between the desires of the ego and the desires of the spirit. How do we fix this? Celeste asked, her brows furrowed in deep thought. She understood the importance of learning this, as the ego mind was one of the greatest blocks that keep humans from connecting to the divine.
This is
No?
so
So,
perfect. So I want to talk about this for a minute because it's a game changer, I think. And I know for me, it's been such a blessing for me. So, thousands of years ago, as we were cave people, the ego said, run from the predator. And it was great then. But over thousands of years, what has happened is the ego has become overly activated. And so the ego comes in and says, oh no, you can't do a podcast. Who are you to do a podcast? Or the ego says, oh no, you don't want to wear that. Someone's going to think it's ugly, right? So the ego comes in and it holds us hostage. It holds us back if we let it. Most people are letting the ego run most of their decisions. They're living in fear. They're caught in that space. And so the ego's having a great time. It's like, oh yeah, I got this under control. But guess who's supposed to be running the ship? Not the ego. That's for you. You're supposed to run the ship. And so there's this invitation for us to not reject the ego. We still want to be friends with the ego, but we want to know the boundaries, and we've got to set that ego into a boundary place. So what happens is the ego, again, wants to help us. It thinks it's helping us. But if we have an opportunity to become the witness, now all of a sudden we can catch the ego and we can say, oh, okay, ego, I know you're trying to keep me safe, but. And so as soon as we can start to catch ourselves, the ego starts to say, oh, okay, that's not my place. Okay, no problem. And the ego slowly subsides. But it doesn't if you don't call it out. I want to share a really quick story because I want to make sure that it's very clear how potent the ego can be. This was in my 20s. I was finishing up a degree. And so I have this health administration degree, and it was the final exam of my final class of the degree. I'm at the finish line. I'm so excited to be done this degree. So I go in, I'm writing the test. But because I had failed a test in a previous class and had to do a rewrite, guess what? Guess what was playing? I was writing this test. Oh my God, you're going to have to rewrite this one. You're failing. Da, da, da. So I'm writing the test, and this ego, it keeps coming at me, telling me I'm failing, telling me I'm going to have to do a rewrite. But I'm persevering and I'm trying to not pay attention to it. I'm writing as best as I can, answering the questions. Well, by the time I was done, I knew I had failed. I got to my car, I bawled my eyes out. I get home, I email my professor and I said, hey, I know you probably haven't marked the test yet, but I'm pretty sure I failed. Can you tell me what I need to work on for the rewrite? My professor emailed me back right away, bless her heart. And she said, I don't know whose test you think you wrote, but you got 87%. You guys, I got 87%, but I had let my ego convince me I had failed. This is how potent the ego can be. The ego can tell you a story until you believe it. Our job is to catch that ego before you start to believe in the BS, because that ego is taking a small little moment in time and saying, oh, I'm going to apply this to this and I'm going to apply this to this, but it's not even true. And then we get it caught in that trap and we make decisions based on that. And the soul is saying, oh no, but you really would benefit from this. And yet that ego is running the show. So the first invitation I have for people is to give the ego a name, to give it a name. So I call my ego Jane. I have a client, she called hers Ivana Gripe a lot, which I thought is quite funny. Isn't that clever?
Yeah.
So Ivana Gripe a lot. But give your ego a name, because what'll happen is it'll help you to discern whether or not it's your ego or whether or not it's coming from higher self. It'll get more clear and you'll start to recognize the voice of the ego. The ego is oftentimes, by the way, more negative. The ego is usually more fear-based, more rushing, more forcing type of energy. Whereas the higher self, okay, so now we've got the ego and now I'm going to talk the higher self. The higher self is your God self. Okay, some people call it the God mind, the divine mind, the higher self, lots of names for it, but it's there, it's part of you. And so the higher self voice is gentle and graceful. It's not forceful. It's going to draw you in. It's going to be more gentle and loving. So those are some indicators to separate the two. But nonetheless, as we get the ego to step aside, guess what happens? The channel to our higher self opens up like you wouldn't believe. The minute that we say, oh, ego, thank you so much, but I've got this, or oh, ego, I know that you're trying to keep me safe. What is this really about? Or we start to get a little information. As soon as that ego is befriended and put in its place, that channel, that floodgate opens up to the higher self. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, I had this dream, or I had this vision, or this synchronicity happened, and this awareness starts to show up in them. So giving the higher self a name is a wonderful thing to do. And so that's an invitation. By the way, my higher self, her name is Rose Hope. My real name, Deanne. My higher self is Rose. And
And you
so
work with her
I
by
that's
bringing her here. And
that's right. So I invite her to come to write my books, to do my speaking, to do the work in
sure.
the world out there so that it's her that's coming through. It's my divinity that's coming through and not my 3D version of Deanne. So giving yourself these names and building these relationships within yourself is one of the most powerful things that you can do for yourself in terms of mastering your mind and mastering your energy. Even if you just do that, it will start to make a huge difference in your day to day.
Right. And I'm completely with you. Do you have this experience with any of your clients where I kind of developed this almost like I was like talking down to my gripe a lot?
Oh,
Every
yeah.
time she was kind of going off and getting all mouthy and just down on me, it was like, hey, quiet. Hey, bad, you know? And
Yeah.
then she got louder instead of
Yeah.
holding her. It was almost like, oh, then she's going to fight back even more. So, do you have
Yeah.
a recommendation for, I don't want to say very pervasive negative self-talk or egoic thinking that's very fear-based, like anything that you recommend when it's really loud or very cumbersome?
Yeah. When we reject the ego, again, it's like a small child. So it'll get louder if we're rejecting it. And this is why I always say, thank you so much for this insight, ego, but
Mhm.
I'm going to choose this instead
Mhm.
because it's a more gentle approach. And I know some people will tell their ego to F off. I know there are people that do that and that works for them. However, I want to invite everyone again to look at it as a small, innocent child
Yeah.
because a lot of your ego is coming in from childhood anyways, right? All those experiences you had as a child often will come through there. And so if we can look at the ego as a small innocent child, or I even sometimes will invite people to imagine it as a cartoon character of some sort, and what does it look like and feel like? Get to know your ego, befriending your ego.
Mhm.
So then we're not rejecting it, but we're also setting a boundary. So it really is about a healthy boundary with the ego more than anything. Just like any other relationship, Megan, you want it to be healthy. So you want to speak kindly, but truthfully with it. And sometimes you need to be firm with it too.
Right.
But if you're willing to do that versus rejecting it and being like, F off, I don't like what you're saying, then that gentleness will yield even better results for you too.
Exactly. I'm with you. This has been such a productive conversation going through some of the quotes of the arc and really talking about how you help your clients, how you see this world unfolding right in front of our eyes. I really wanted to leave off with this one last quote from the book. And of course, there's so many more we could have gone through, try to get to as many as we could. But this is somewhere in the middle of the book where it says, quote, "You experienced something stunningly beautiful that felt undeniably real. There is no doubt in my mind that others have experienced something similar. By opening up and sharing your story, you create a safe space for others to do the same." And I just
Mm.
wanted to say that's what you did for us today here at this podcast, as well as in your book, The Ark, which I certainly recommend the readers listen to.
Oh, thank
We
you.
really want to thank you for your time today and being on our podcast.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure for me, a true joy for me. And my wish for anyone out there, whether you read the book or not, is that you open yourself up to your inner magic, to your inner truth, and you build that relationship with divine within you so that that can carry you through this beautiful journey that we're on. So thank you so much. And I do have a gift to leave you with, and I know you guys are going to do the book giveaway. But
Mhm.
I have something else and I want to share this. So part of my work is specializing in the Akashic records. And in the book, you do get introduced to some concept of the Akashics, and it is your soul's library. And this is the space of deep divine intuition and connection. So everything that is, was, and ever shall be is in this field, this Akashic records of energy. And so I use that to do my work, my intuitive work, and my readings and all of that. And I have a team of incredible readers as well that have been trained under me. And we also have a link for everybody to do what's called the Soul Blueprint Quiz. And you can help to understand your soul blueprint, which is basically the guideposts for your life. And then at the end of that, you'll get a complimentary session. So that will be in the show notes, I think, for
That is
everybody.
fantastic. I know the listeners are definitely going to be looking forward to seeing that, taking the quiz, and having a reading with one of your people under your team, which is
And it
something
might be me too. So it will depend. It's kind of the luck of the draw.
for sure, for sure. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today, Reverend Rose Hope. And April, please take us out.
In addition to reading the book and listening to your podcast, which you have had some fantastic guests on there, and I love the deep places that you go. I'm a Scorpio rising, and I just love the authenticity and the real world stuff and places that you go with your guests. It just feels really valuable. You have a very high caliber of guests that come on your show. So, in addition to the book and your podcast, what other offerings do you have for people to connect or learn from you? Because I know you were talking about clients, but what does that actually look like? What kind of clientele do you have?
Thank you so much for asking. I serve people who are on the mission to discover more in life, and particularly entrepreneurs. So, any heart centered spiritual entrepreneurs, those are my jam. I actually specialize in business evolution because I found that it was such a block for so many of my clients who were beautiful, amazing healers, but struggling to find their place in the business world. So I've got a few really amazing structures and formulas that help us so that we can live authentically and we can show up fully as we need to instead of feeling like we need to fit in some particular box. So I have workshops, I have intuitive workshops, I teach the Akashic records, I teach metaphysics, I teach on business development. So quite a big spectrum of things. And so there's lots of different ways that you can work with me. I got a lot of free stuff too. So my YouTube channel, you can check it out. It is under Rose Hope. Check out my YouTube channel. There's beautiful wisdom walks in there that I've been recording for the last couple years that are in there that provide some value as well for free. But certainly you can check out the website, and on there is the podcast and all of the offerings that I have as well. So whether it's teaching, whether it's one-to-one, whatever it is that you're feeling called to, it's there. And then you can lean in if you wish to. So thank you. Thank you for asking about that.
According to your website, you've been on a lot of big name networks and things like that. So you've really graced this little small podcast
Oh,
with your story and being able to share that with us. So I really appreciate the time. And for Megan for agreeing to co-host and
thank you.
bringing your own perspective and questions to this because I just knew, yeah, Megan needs to be a part of this conversation.
I love it. I loved her energy. And I'm going to add that you might have said this is a small podcast, but I can feel it is mighty in its energy and its ripple. So I just needed to share that with you, April.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me. Bye.